It started with laughter. Not the forced kind that fills awkward silences, but the real sort, unexpected, warm, and entirely disarming. Madeline Ashford had never intended to fall for anyone, let alone a married man, but life has a wicked sense of irony. She was 32, working as a gallery curator in a quiet town just outside Cambridge. Her world was a blend of oil paintings, vintage catalogues, and the occasional wine-soaked evenings spent arguing about art movements with friends. She was content, not because she had everything she wanted, but because she had stopped wanting too much. That changed the moment she met Henry Whitlow. He had arrived at the gallery on a Wednesday, one of those grey English days where the sky seemed too heavy to lift. Tall, suited, and with a slightly crooked tie, he wandered the space like he was searching for something he could not quite name. Madeline had noticed him immediately, not because he was handsome, although he was in a quietly elegant sort of way, but because he looked like he did not belong there. As if he had stumbled into beauty while looking for something else entirely. They exchanged polite conversation at first. He asked about the artist behind the abstract canvases, and she replied with a rehearsed history of brushstrokes and influence. But then he said something that made her pause. It feels like this one's hiding something. Like it's pretending not to be about grief. She looked at him properly then. There was something in his voice, a kind of softness, like he'd tasted loss before. From that day on, Henry began visiting the gallery weekly. Sometimes he came during lunch, sometimes just before closing. He always asked about the pieces, but over time their conversations slipped beyond art. They spoke about music, old books, memories of the coast, and the feeling of being slightly out of place in your own life. He told her he worked in urban planning. She told him she used to paint but stopped after university. He never mentioned a wife. Not once. She should have asked. She should have noticed the ring he never wore or the way he avoided questions about home. But Madeline was falling. Slowly, then all at once. She began to notice the scent of his aftershave before he entered. She started dressing differently on days he might come by. And when he didn't show, her chest felt hollow in a way she could not explain. The truth came out on a cold evening in November. The gallery was hosting a small private viewing, and Henry arrived late, rain clinging to his coat. She greeted him with a smile, and for the first time, he hesitated before returning it. "I shouldn't have come tonight," he said quietly. She frowned. "Why not?" He looked away. "Because my wife is waiting at home. And I've run out of excuses." The words hit her like glass shattering. For a moment, she said nothing. Just stared at him, willing the sentence to make sense. "You're married." "I am," he said. "And I should have told you. But I didn't know how. I didn't expect this." She wanted to be angry. She wanted to shout, to cry, to tell him to leave and never return. But all she managed was a whisper. "Neither did I." He left that night without another word, and she spent the evening staring at a painting of a weeping willow, wondering how something rooted so deeply could still break in the wind. Days passed. Then a week. Then two. She tried to carry on as if nothing had changed. She buried herself in work, avoided the songs that reminded her of their conversations, and convinced herself that it had been nothing. A friendship. A passing fascination. But she was lying. And lies, no matter how elegantly dressed, eventually unravel. Henry returned the following month. She saw him before he entered, standing across the street with a look of indecision carved into his features. When he finally walked in, she was already by the Monet prints, pretending not to notice. "I didn't come to make excuses," he said. "Good," she replied, without looking at him. He stepped closer. "But I needed you to know something." She turned. Her expression was unreadable. "And what is that, Henry? That you're sorry? That you didn't mean to mislead me? That I think about you more than I should? And that I've never felt more honest than I do when I'm with you?" She looked at him then, really looked, and for the first time, she saw the sadness behind his charm, the ache beneath the polished sentences. "What are you asking for?" she asked. "Nothing," he said. "Just a chance to say it out loud." Their affair, if one could call it that, did not begin with fireworks. It began with a coffee, then a walk, then an evening where neither of them wanted to say goodbye. They never spoke about the future. They existed in moments, stolen hours in parks, quiet dinners where glances said more than words, and hotel rooms that smelled of guilt and longing. Madeline knew it was wrong. She knew it would end badly. But she also knew she loved him. Not in the reckless, all-consuming way of youth, but in a quieter, deeper way. She loved the way he listened. The way he remembered things she had only mentioned once. The way he made her feel seen. Henry, for his part, never promised her anything. He never spoke ill of his wife, but he never spoke of her at all. And Madeline never asked him to choose. Because she already knew. It lasted 6 months. 6 months of maybes and might-haves. Of whispered hellos and bitter goodbyes. Until one day, he didn't come. No message. No call. Nothing. She waited. Told herself he must be busy. That something must have come up. But deep down, she knew. The end had arrived, not with closure, but with silence. Weeks passed. Then a letter arrived at the gallery. No return address. Just her name on the envelope. Inside was a single sheet. "Maddie, I thought I could live 2 lives. That I could keep what I felt for you separate from the rest of me. But I can't. And I shouldn't. What we had was beautiful, but it cannot continue. Not because it wasn't real, but because it was. You taught me that love isn't about possession. It's about presence. And I was never fully present with you, no matter how much I wanted to be. I hope you remember us kindly. I always will. Henry," she cried that night. Not out of heartbreak, but because she knew he was right. They had been a fleeting truth in a world that demanded permanence. And sometimes, love is not about staying. It's about knowing when to let go. Madeline never saw Henry again, but she began painting once more. Her first piece was of a willow tree, bending but unbroken, beneath a sky full of gray. And in that painting, she left all the words she could never say. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more romantic and unforgettable tales.